All right, guys, this is Lauren Lando from ESS. Again, with our roundtable discussions today, I have Dr. Dawes. Dr. Dawes is not only a friend, but he's also a heck of a practitioner. He has a unique perspective in the industry because he blends the academia and the practical side. So he gets the best of both worlds, and he can really help his students. He's also the assistant strength and conditioning professor down at University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. So I want to introduce Jay. He's had a lot of projects he's worked on in the past, and I want to introduce him and have him discuss a little bit about some of the books he's written and other projects he has going on from the research side. Jay, thank you for joining us today.
No, thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit. I know you've written a couple books. Talk to me about them. Which ones are they?
So the first one we wrote was Developing Agility and Quickness. So that was a textbook that came out from the NSCA, and really a really cool text. It talked about some of the theoretical underpinnings of agility and quickness, and then we got some of the best practitioners literally in the world to help contribute chapters to that, and also to talk about some of their specific techniques for agility and quickness development. So a really good text, really practitioner friendly. But also, giving them the underpinnings of the, more hardcore physiology that are necessary to have a good understanding of the techniques that are required.
And I think that's really a good point, because I think a lot of times there's, agility drills and agility books out there that are just drills and drills and drills, but there's not the science really as the backbone for it. So hats off to you guys for really laying down good, solid scientific information, and then having good practitioners to help kind of get that project off the ground. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. And I think that's the big thing is, especially with what you're doing here, I think that's the big challenge is a lot of people will, set out a series of cones and go run through these, but there's not really any intent on how that's actually done.
Yeah.
And, it's not that you do it, but how you do it that makes all the difference. And I think, with a lot of the stuff that you're doing as well, that's, very evident in your practice. So.
Well, thank you. And why don't you give the viewers a little bit of an idea of kind of what your role is at the university?
Yeah, so we're a couple different hats. My primary role is I'm an assistant professor of strength and conditioning.
Okay.
So primarily work within our master's program with our master's students, our graduate students, trying to get them skilled and prepared to be great practitioners. And we do have a few that are going to be moving on to more academic endeavors like going for their PhDs and things of that nature. But really what we're trying to do is develop good coaches and good practitioners. One of the big things that we do try and stress is, having an evidence-based approach to what you're doing. So, even though there may not be 15 years of longitudinal research on every single decision that you make, you're at least backing up with some good science and some good rationale as far as what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. The other stuff that I do at the university is right now I'm the strength and conditioning coach for women's soccer.
Oh, nice.
Which is a lot of fun because, for me, it's one of those things where I get to kind of balance out, Coach J and Dr. J a little bit better. And
can Dr. J dunk?
Not this Dr. J, but yeah. But one of the good things about that is for me, I learn from my athletes every single day, and I think it's one of those things when you're not coaching on a regular basis, it's just very easy to lose that side of it and get very dogmatic and stuck in the books. And a lot of stuff in books looks really, really good, but when you try and apply them in the real world, it becomes a real challenge. It's kind of like I even talk about the students when you look at like periodization and periodization models in particular. It's like communism. Looks great on paper, but when you try and apply it, there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and I think that's, to your point, the theory and practice, two different things. And what looks clean and easy in a textbook and easy for answers and easy to put answers down for an exam versus, okay, how's this really work in the real world when I've got somebody living and breathing in front of me who may have suffered an injury, had something that now you have to adapt and overcome. So that's great that you live that way in both worlds, because I know a lot of practitioners, they get to a certain point and they pick one or the other.
Sure.
And you have a unique perspective, and I think that's awesome that you can show that to your students. Like, here's what we're teaching you, from the textbook. Here's what I'm going to tell you happens once you're in the real world, because that's a shock to them once they get out. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's what I told them was like, don't be afraid to mess up.
Yep.
And I told them, like, hey, I've messed up a lot, and I'm still going to mess up a lot. But that's the whole thing as far as the learning process goes. And a lot of times, when we try and base our decisions on just maybe one research study or stuff of that nature. I mean, the thing about research is it's very clinical. control, and it's very controlled. And that's the charm in it, is because you can isolate certain variables and see if that's helping make the change that we're trying to make. But again, when you start applying this in the real world's messy, and there's a lot of things that have to be controlled to in order to get those same results. So, you know, it's one of those things where we always try and let them know, okay, here's, you know, kind of your best case scenario, and, you know, here's a, you know, something we've seen to be effective. But now how you transition that and work with your athletes and with your clients and things of that nature may be a little bit more of a challenge.
So let me ask you this: what got you into the path that you're currently in?
Accident. Actually.
What was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so actually, when I was in Oklahoma City, we had ran a strength conditioning facility. Originally, it started out as about 1,200 square feet. Within a 3-year time span, we expanded it to about 6,300 square feet.
Wow.
So pretty big jump. Was really fortunate there. We worked with a group of training facilities there in town that were more sport-specific skills, and we provided their strength conditioning needs, speed and agility courses, and things of that nature for them.
Okay.
So, you know, was doing that. It literally was, you know, kind of what I had aspired to. At that point in time, I had, I think, 4 different certifications. So I was thinking, well, you know, I got 4 certifications. I need to keep up my CEUs. Not realizing I was probably going to get as involved in some different organizations and things as I did. But so I started a PhD program.
Okay.
I figured, you know, nothing wrong with taking a class each semester, just trying to, you know, refine your skills and stay up on the latest, you know, information that's out there. And before I know it, I'm halfway through a PhD. At that point in time, I got hired by the NSCA to be their education director. And one of the first things, Dr. Lee Brown, he interviewed me. He said, well, you know, one of the big things we're looking for is a guy who's, you know, going for their PhD, and that's one of the things that make you competitive for this. You know, are you going to pursue that? I'm like, yes, I am.
In the process.
So it was one of those things where I kind of took a very non-linear process to it. You know, most guys are done with their PhD in 3 to 5 years. It took me 8 because I was busy being a coach and a practitioner in the meantime.
And developing all the skill sets.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, for me personally, that was a great route to go because, you know, I got to meet guys like you, and, you know, I was out working with some of the best in the industry. So, you know, even though I didn't have a traditional PhD experience, I feel like what I got instead was a really, really great experience and knowledge from everybody that I got to work with.
Well, that's great. You know, I think a lot of times if you ask a practitioner about their path of how they got there, maybe it was more undulated, didn't have that linear, pretty look to it, kind of like we talk about textbook versus real world.
Sure.
However, I know for you, and I know for me as well, I would not change any of the experiences I've had because it's set me to date to handle multiple situations and scenarios that I maybe wouldn't have been armed to be able to handle. So let's go back to the NSCA aspect. So what was your job as the education coordinator?
Oh man, so as education director there, basically what we were responsible for doing was coordinating educational activities, products, resources for, well, anywhere from about 30 to 45,000 individuals.
Wow.
30 domestically, 45,000 worldwide. So at that point in time in the department, it was me and 3 other folks who were working there, and so it was a pretty big task. But again, in the time frame we were there, I feel like we really did a good job as far as trying to create product and, you know, calling upon, you know, the individuals in the association to help us create those products. I think my standpoint is, like, we literally have 30,000 experts at our fingertips, so why not utilize them?
Absolutely.
And you know, again, as far as from a networking perspective and getting to know other coaches and philosophies, I feel like that was a really great experience for me as well, and really got me exposed to some you know, ideas and concepts that otherwise I may not have necessarily seen. So
absolutely, I'm sure you saw a lot of the trends kind of evolve over the time.
And fade away. Yeah.
Right. Certain things fade away, some things come back into play that were maybe popular years ago, and we kind of we run into that. Like right now, we're running into the whole debates of steady state cardio and bringing that back into the mix. Where, you know, a couple years ago it was the high intensity based intervals, and so it's funny, a lot of these things kind of just come back around, and I'm sure you saw a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is, like, anytime you get, again, it kind of goes back to some of the newest research that comes out. Anytime you find the kind of the newest, hottest trend, people jump on it, you know, really quick. When I think, you know, just time and experience has probably shown that, you know, really a balance of
do
all
everything
things, is probably a more prudent strategy. So, you know, it's just like doing high intensity training. Like, if you do it every day, you're going to wreck people. Right. You know, so you got to have that balance between steady state, high intensity, and things of that
where does it fit?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I read a research article the other day, because that's what us PhD guys do.
Can you give me the highlighted version?
Oh yeah, I'll give you the real Reader's Digest version. But yeah, essentially it was looking at the training programs of world-class athletes. athletes. And a gentleman had gone back in and looked at their training records over the last 3-4 years prior to an Olympic cycle, and or in an Olympic cycle, and found that the majority of work they actually did was steady state. And the thing is they had the intermittent burst of the higher intensity activity, but if you look at the durations and just the sheer volume of training they had to do, you can't train them high intensity all the time and get a high saturation level. So basically, it was looking at, even though they did implement this into their training program and maybe more than other individuals, they still had quite a bit of just regular training and steady state type training. So
yeah, so I mean, to your point, it's one of those things that everything has its place where it fits. You've got to decide as a practitioner where that fits within your programming and who your athlete is. So now I also know you still stay active with the NSCA quite a bit. You present nationally and internationally. You talk to us a little bit about what your favorite topics are that you like to present on when you're traveling with the NSCA.
Anything that anybody will listen to me about, really. Here actually
people are still showing up. I hear
it's amazing. So I think they accidentally thought it was somebody else's lecture, but no. I mean, in a lot of cases, here recently, probably in the last 4 or 5 years or so, kind of taken a split in my career path. So a lot of the training and research focus I have, the big umbrella is human performance, but one is for athletics and the other is for more tactical or law enforcement.
Oh, nice.
So recently, I've been getting a lot of invites to speak on things specifically for law enforcement officers, so SWAT, recruits, cadets, things of that nature. So that's been kind of an interesting area.
Talk to us a little bit about that, would you?
We've talked about it in the past a little bit, but if you look at a typical cadet class, there's some folks you'll go in there and you go, okay, why didn't you sign a pro contract with somebody? I mean, they're jumping 30, 32 inches on their verticals, and then you have others where you're pretty sure they walked into Walmart and said, would you like to be an officer? It's all over the board. So I think that's one of the fun things is looking at, okay, occupationally, what do you have to do to be fit for duty? And really trying to retro engineer this thing a little bit. So basically what we do in strength conditioning, where you go through your basic needs analysis, task evaluation, things of that nature. It's been done in law enforcement, but they haven't necessarily put hard numbers to what fitness tests and assessments are going to predict your ability to do the job. And the hard thing about that is there's a huge issue that goes along with that related to just the litigation issues and anytime you basically hinge a fitness test on somebody's job, so in other words, you have to do X or you don't get to keep your job, it gets real sticky.
Oh, I bet.
And so right now, a lot of the line of research I'm looking at is trying to look at what are the physiological demands of different types of tasks, and then how can we use these fitness assessments over here to help best predict who's going to be successful at those tasks. So again, similar to what you do in athletics, just in a different genre. So.
Well, and that's become a hot area for practitioners to get jobs out of school is in the tactical sector. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there right now. So that's great that you're kind of maybe leading the path here and kind of looking at some of the research strategies and some of these strategies to help make these in the line of duty practitioners healthier and more efficient at their job.
Yeah, and it's a really cool area because a lot of the things that we have to do on the field of athletics is really similar to what they have to do worst case scenario in their daily job. So again, it's one of those things where it's not necessarily a leap trying to transfer those different components over. It's just kind of frame it in a different way. So
I would believe that maybe the hard part of that job as well, and I kind of see it with a lot of my tactical athletes, my MMA athletes. Some of them are very, very good at their skill set, but they haven't been in the weight room. Their training age is very, very shallow. And so a lot of times they're coming in and they have to get ready for this test or evaluation or a fight or a contest. And you're like, oh, I have to reteach you. I have to teach you these things that you thought you knew you were doing. Do you run into that a lot?
Oh, a ton, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's almost, from what we would consider ideal, it's almost an inverted pyramid. So instead of having your foundation of fitness and mobility, stability, strength, power here, it's flipped and it's more skills, and then it kind of goes up the rank. So they're really trying to base everything off their skill sets, and then they're trying to adjust and add these other prerequisites. Really. So yeah, it is kind of an interesting area, and that's the whole thing is obviously they're good at what they do for a reason. So that's what I always tell them. Just because I make you more fit in these regards doesn't necessarily mean that's going to make you better at your skill set, but it may help you accommodate stress better, and over the long haul may help you with more resilience versus having a shorter career.
Right, raise the athletic ceiling.
Yeah,
and say,
absolutely.
You've got this great skill set. Now I'm just going to, make you a little bit better athlete and see if we can make the skill sets better based on the
right.
athletic
Absolutely,
development.
and it's kind of one of the situations. When it gets down to it, is hopefully they never have to draw upon that fitness. Hopefully in their career they don't run into that situation where it becomes something they absolutely have to have. But I always tell them that it's like having your gun. It's like, are you going to stop carrying your gun? And most of them go, well, no. I was like, well, when's the last time you shot it? Oh, it's been 10 years. I'm like, right, but it's nice to know it's there if you need it. So it's kind of the same thing with their fitness levels. Like, it's nice to know it's there if you have to call on it.
Yeah,
you got it.
That's a great analogy, and I'm sure it resonates with them right away. Well, it was remarkable. It was remarkable, no doubt. So let me ask you this. So you said you just got back into the strength conditioning role for the college soccer team. Talk to me about maybe some of the challenges that you're having with that, being out of that game for a little bit and now coming back in. Were there some challenges, or did you feel like having the time away gave you better perspective now going in? You're like, I'm going to implement this. I know I'm going to do without this. Here's the things I can truly influence. Give me a little idea of some of those battles.
I think the biggest thing, yes and no. We're working a lot with the law enforcement. A lot of the challenges at the collegiate setting are similar to law enforcement. All of a sudden, practice schedule change or training schedule changes. You got to adjust and adapt and things of that nature. So not quite. It hasn't been as big of a leap coming back as I had anticipated it would be. One big thing that has been a little bit of a challenge is again, with the fitness levels, is making sure that they have the appropriate base built up first.
Right.
Versus just taking into higher level exercises that some individuals may value as being important for athletics, which is true, but they just don't simply have the base yet from a fitness perspective to accommodate those higher levels of training. So really, it's going back in and it's really trying to build the base and
reestablish that foundation.
Yeah, exactly. And right now, with the young ladies I'm working with, they're great. They're really hooked up. It's kind of one of those situations. I've been very fortunate to where I don't have to drag people along through their training sessions. If I told them to run through the wall, they go, okay, how fast should we do that?
And how many times?
And like I said, I've been really fortunate in that regard. But I think a lot of it is just going back in and focus on fundamentals and techniques and making sure that we're really trying to clean that up first. And subsequently, we've been seeing a lot of gains in their overall strength levels and overall technique and things of that nature. So I'm real pleased with how they're doing.
Yeah, I'm one of those believers that getting people strong, you'll never wish you didn't.
Right.
As long as relative strength stays in a good place, getting people strong is always a good place to be. But you've got to have that foundation first, and I think a lot of people skip that one. And I will say this is pretty interesting. We've done a number of these roundtable discussions, and literally every practitioner I've spoke to, the one thing they always bring up, and you did as well, is you have to adapt.
Right.
And that is the biggest thing that I think young practitioners have a hard time dealing with, is how to adapt.
Right.
And obviously you're planning and preparing your students for that during your course of preparation. So I just want to, I want to thank you for coming out today and just giving us a sneak peek into what you do. I've been fortunate enough to present with Jay and watch him present. If you're ever at an NSCA conference or any conference that Jay is presenting at, he's a can't miss practitioner. You must go watch him. His enthusiasm, his passion, and purely the knowledge that he will give practitioners is worth its weight in gold. So real quickly, can you tell everybody where they can get that book? The Speed and Agility.
Developing
Agility.
Yeah, so really any Barnes & Noble, Amazon, it's pretty easily accessible. It's through Human Kinetics.
Okay.
And then in June, we actually have a new book coming out. Me and another great practitioner from Texas, John Sissick, have a book called Maximal Interval Training coming out. So it does talk about a little bit of that high-intensity interval training and a little bit more metabolic conditioning type things as well. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time here today, and I know tons of powerful information and knowledge that you're passing along to practitioners. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Ruben.